change a life that day or hold a stranger's hand. I watched the smoke from my roof and could not understand. Just fell to my knees, I prayed and I cried. You went on like soldiers that time could not divide. You climbed and shouted, hoping they would hear you.
Hi, everybody. It's Maria from What's the Story with Maria. How's it going? So, we are coming to you live from I'm in New York, but I'm in New Jersey tonight. And our show comes live every week, every Tuesday from 9 to 10 Eastern. And we hope that you will join us as many Tuesdays as you can muster, because we love it. If you don't catch us live, you can catch us in repeat, which is right here on Facebook, my Facebook page, our What's the Story with Maria Facebook page, Leo Rodriguez's Facebook page, and also our YouTube channel, our What's the Story with Maria YouTube channel. And if you at any point in time feel inclined to share it as our show goes live onto your page, please feel free to do that. Or at the end of the show, if you want to share it to any page, that is your prerogative. We're very proud of what we do. And so we're happy to do that. And Danielle has joined us. Danielle from D's Enlightened Edits, our wonderful friend. She is an amazing medium, psychic. She is a healer. She's a teacher. She does many amazing things. And so please go and check out Danielle at damseldesigns.com, DAMSL designs.com. And she's going to blow your mind. I personally had a quantum session with Dee, and it was life-changing, really. And then I had a spirit animal reading, and that was incredible. So I can't say enough about D's Enlightened Edits. Go and check it out. If you have any questions, you can always message me privately, and I can tell you about some of my experience that I had with that, or a lot of our friends that have had that. So thanks, Dee, for always checking in with us. And, I'm sure Dee can chime in on some of the things that we'll talk about tonight. So here's what I want to talk about tonight. As everyone knows, or maybe you don't know, maybe you were, busy doing something else, but yesterday was September 11th, 9/11. Maybe you're a young person in your 20s and you were just a little person then. And so now it's just something you see on TV or you hear about historically. But, I lived 10 blocks from there when it happened and worked a few more blocks up. So when this day comes around and I see those purple lights that shoot up to the sky, thanks, Dee. When I see those purple lights, my first reaction is deep sadness. And my second reaction is like almost a frozen fear in my heart. And it's hard to describe that kind of thing. And but this is where I go to immediately. I think, wow, if I felt that just living 10 blocks from where it happened, what did my friends, a lot of my friends are first responders, what must they have felt on that day? And so every year I always, as long as I do the show, I will always dedicate this week's show to the first responders that are my friends or anybody else's friends. And the reason I think it is so important is because we need, you see that, never forget, you see that a lot of people have it tattooed, a lot of people have patches, a lot of people make signs, but what does it really mean? What it really means to me is that as this day comes along, that I stop what I'm doing and I remember to not forget. I remember to say there were people that day could have done anything else. and they chose to do their job. Look, I'm a singer and a teacher. There's nothing that I'm going to do that is going to be ever as dangerous as what these people have to do. I mean, there may be something, who knows, but I am always so grateful for my friends and even people that I've never met that are first responders, because I can't even imagine what your job is like. And in the last few years, people have gotten a lot of bad press, okay, for good or bad reasons. But I am someone that honors. I will always honor what they do, and I will always respect the bravery that it takes to do something like that. And I love my friends. I will always tip my hat to first responders. And so I always like to dedicate this night to them. And so, Leah, why don't you go? There you are. You ready?
Um, I was gonna say as well, and I know we're gonna be heavy on first responders, but I would also like to remember, especially those folks that were on the plane going into the Capitol to Washington D.C. who
Absolutely.
stood up and
Absolutely. Let's roll.
you know, they did it. They stood up and they said, "Hey, we're not going to let this happen," and they gave their
Absolutely.
lives for
Thank
us
you,
as
Leah.
well.
Thank you. Actually, Melissa Etheridge wrote a song about it called Let's Roll. And it's an amazing story. There's so many stories of bravery that day, just amazing stories. And the families are heroes too, said Danielle. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Did you see
Absolutely.
this year, Maria, how they really focused on having very young people come and read the
I
names
noticed that.
because they wanted to uh never forget. And there were some adorable children who were reading for their uncles and for their aunties and their grandparents and parents and people that they knew.
Yep, absolutely. That, and I noticed that yesterday too, because I always turn it on. Um, uh, I always turn it on. And so I noticed that too. I was like, wow, this is really beautiful. I wonder if that was like on purpose or,
Mhm.
and I love that because, and you're a teacher too, Leo, so you'll get this. As teachers, we're also historians because we are older than our kids. And so we have seen or we've learned things and we want to pass them on, right? And I feel like it's my duty as just a human being to pass on good things that I've learned to others, especially as a teacher. So I think that's really important. And so much amazing art that came from this as well. Like I remember shortly after it, I read about this incredible sculptor called Sean Egan. I was reading the New York Times, which is I usually get it delivered, but so I was reading about this Sean Egan. This is maybe a few months later that had created this image of the first responders down there with that you remember that image of like all the twisted rubble, right? He used scraps he worked for Waterford Crystal, Irish guy,
Mhm.
worked for Waterford Crystal, and he took scraps that they didn't want anymore, and then he took it home and he worked on it himself. And it's this incredible. You can Google Sean Egan, and he donated it to one of the firehouses. And so I knew about this guy, but I had read about him and I thought, oh wow. And I'm at the duplex. I was working at the duplex one night. And you know how I usually talk to the crowd. And so I went to this guy out of the blue and I said, "Hey, what's your name? You're cute or something." And he said, "Sean." He had this really thick brogue. Sean Egan. And I said, "Sean Egan, I just read about that name today." It was like the weirdest thing.
Oh, wow.
When I came off the stage, I said, "Are you a sculptor?" He's like, "Yeah, I work for." It was this guy. I mean, what are the chances that this guy would be there? Anyway, we've remained great friends. He's really sweet, and he's since made me a few pieces, Waterford crystal pieces.
Danielle and I would say probably, yeah, a little coincident, but
I
probably more
know,
on the it
but
was all planned out already.
that was one of those beautiful stories that came out of it, where people from all over the world met. And we're going to bring on some of our friends soon. I wrote a song right after that. I wrote these lyrics. My building at the time, I lived on Houston and 6, was attached to a fire station. I think it was a ladder 6. And I took a video because that day I just, everybody does what they do. And we didn't have phone cameras then, right? We didn't even have smartphones. We had
Mm-mm.
phones.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And so I had these like wine cameras. I took pictures and I had a little pocket camera. But I also remember, like with my video camera on my roof, bending down because I saw my fire department go out, not knowing anything, just knowing I could see the building that was hit. And then I don't know, I felt compelled to video everything, So I remember those firefighters leaving, and about 6 of them didn't come back, and I didn't know that until like a few days later. But so, and then I had lots of friends in the NYPD and New York Transit, EMT friends that just went through like the most difficult time any human being could ever go through down there. So I wrote these lyrics, and then I met with my friend Karen Cole, who's a beautiful songwriter, and we came together and we wrote this song called "Amputated Skyline." And so that was what I could do in the months that followed. But but I always thought, well, this is what I can do as an artist, And that day, I remember we were open. We just opened out the duplex. The owner at the time, his name is Rick Panson. I was the one that lived the closest to work, and he said, "Can you come in?" And I said, "I'll come in under one condition, that I don't charge one single person for one single thing, and that if I feel frightened at any point in time, I can just close." And he said, "No problem." That was my intention. I just want to be a station. We had televisions up at the time. Just be a station to show the news so people can watch and to just help people. And that's what I did. So, and I remember everybody that was there that day with me. And, maybe we'll mention, um, I'll mention them now. It was me, Denise DeCurtis, Scott Ryan, Michael Isaacs, Andrew Holmes, Michael Stewart, George Penny, Brendan Ryan, who's going to join us tonight, um, uh, George Penny, this gentleman, Ian, he was from England, and Kerry Ann Dunn, Rory Taggart, who is our friend
Mhm.
from Canada. And we've talked about this before with these friends. Once you have something that happens to you, and I think anybody that's in a stressful situation will agree with us.
Traumatic
You're
experience.
right. Your cells freeze that, and you never forget that again. And I feel like I said this to all of them at separate times. We are forever bonded because of that. Like we'll always be, no matter where we go, and I haven't seen most of those people in a long time, but
Mhm.
we were there on that day together, and that's what we'll always be. So, um, Liz Goldenberg has checked in, and she says, if we learn nothing else from this tragedy, we'll learn that life is short and there is no time for hate. Sandy Dahl, wife of Flight 93 pilot Jason
Jason.
Dahl, about 9. Okay, and you just talked about that, Leo. Michael Dion, Maria, we had to sing at Rose's turn, and I wanted to cry. Yeah, we didn't. Thank you, Michael. Michael was right across the street. We didn't play any music. We couldn't. I know Michael Isaacs came, he walked all the way from 42nd Street, he and Andrew. And I just remember that I said, Michael, don't worry. You don't have to play anything. We're not playing anything. Nobody has to do anything. We're just going to sit and do whatever we need to do and watch the news and talk and hold hands and whatever we want to do. And that's what it was. But I don't want to take up too much time.
Can I tell a story before? Oh, Carol just timed
Yeah,
in. Perfect.
yeah, go ahead.
Um, uh, Years later, I was not there on that day. I remember it. I know exactly where I was in that morning. But years later, I worked on the Spirit Cruise, and we would go around on 9/11, and it was a very somber. We weren't singing. There was maybe a couple of political patriotic songs that were played on the tour, but with some guests, we looked up and we were going right by the towers at that time. The new tower's not been built yet.
Mm,
But it was the lights were up. And I think it was right before it opened, and you could see at the very top all these moth to a flame, moth to a fire, right? But where we were at, on the river looking up at the building. You should not be able to see any of those moths or but you could see small little lighted orbs on the top of that building just
Mm.
floating around in the lights, and we would look like we couldn't figure out how we could what would be flying like that, what would be up there, and we all we could see is it would be, those that we were remembering at the time, those that we were honoring.
Isn't that
Uh,
amazing?
yeah, but it was something that we were on the Hudson looking up from the boat, and we're in the middle of the river, looking up at the towers. It was crazy. Hi, Carol. I see you
Yeah.
there. Okay.
Now, okay, so I do want to acknowledge she's not going to be able to join us tonight, but I do want to acknowledge my great, great friend, Sergeant Suzanne Murray, who has checked in and she says, "Hey, girl, I sent you a text message. I got it, honey. Never forget." And anything else you want to type in there. I mean, it's quite beautiful. I might end up reading some of it. Not anything that's private, but some of the beautiful things that you said. Um, so, and I particularly remember Sue Murray because I was really nervous. I knew she was down. I knew she must be down there. And I remember feeling so scared and calling and calling and calling her and calling and calling and calling and no answer. And it wasn't until a few days later that finally we got a hold of each other. It was stuff like that where you're so scared. You're like, my friend is there. I know my friend is there. She's NYPD. There's no way of course she's there. And being so frightened and sad and scared. And so, Sue, when I finally did hear back from you, was one of the hugest sighs I ever took. So, so many of my friends are these amazing people. And they are like, to me, those unsung silent heroes that go like in my song I wrote, like soldiers that time could not divide, because that's what it is. Like, you just do the next thing in front of you that needs to be done. And most of us do not and will never have to understand that. Lucky for us, we don't ever have to be in that position, right? But I will always honor those people, and that's why I wanted to have the show tonight. And so we have three amazing guests that are going to join us. Our friend, retired Lieutenant Carol, and she is a New York Transit Police. She's going to join us. Retired Sergeant Brendan Ryan, NYPD, and retired. He was in the police department and then became an EMT worker. My friend Michael Rizzo, and we got a bonus tonight because he's not always home, or he's usually traveling sometimes. Dr. Ed Hahn, who also was down there that day. So we have medical people. We have, please, folks, feel free if you want to write in a comment or anything. I don't know if we can do questions because it's a sensitive subject, but now Danielle, who is our medium, says, "Spirit comes to me every year about this time. Thankfully, most are more at peace each year. I had terrible migraines and visions the day before. I know other gifted people who felt the same way." Isn't that interesting? I have a cousin that actually has a little bit of a gift, and she said the same thing. So, okay. So, what are you thinking, Leo?
Well, Maria, I was on children's theater tour that whole summer of 2001 before 9/11, and every base that we were on, which was through New Mexico and Arizona, California, and Colorado, all were on high alert,
Right.
and we could not figure out why and how.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then 2 weeks after I got off tour.
Mm. All right,
Anyway,
guys. So, you know what? Why don't we bring in our friends and everybody, wherever you are in the country, in the world? I want you to applaud as loud as you can. These are the true heroes, the true heroes, the everyday unsung heroes that do their job, go to work, things we will never know or understand, but we should always be grateful. Here is one of them now. Carol, how are you, my friend?
I am well. I am in my Tesla in Tucson because I now, besides being a private investigator, dog sit. And once I get on the phone all of them stop barking. And I have 8 dogs in my house right now. So I'm sitting in my cul-de-sac at sunset in the Tesla, figuring, well, I would never be able to speak otherwise.
Yeah, no, it's true. I don't know what it is about dogs or cats. Once you're on Zoom, they just think like, "Hey, what's going on? What's going
She
on?"
wants to get in the middle. It's first Elizabeth, my little corgi, then the big corgi. That sets Romeo off, and then the other 5 house guests start. And I said, I'm just going to get in the car and drive to the cul-de-sac.
You know what? I love that. I love that about you. All right, honey.
That's how I have my therapy session every once a month. I talk to the therapist from the Tesla, and she thinks it's the funniest thing ever.
Well, listen, you got the AC on too because you're in Arizona now, right?
Yeah, actually, it's pretty cool. Well, actually, it's 92 degrees out, but when you're in Arizona, that's a breeze. We've had it 115 most of the summer.
Unbelievable, honey.
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
so it is what it is, but I'm not
So,
suffering.
so how you doing, honey? How you doing on this day?
Well, yeah, for me, I call 9/11 the longest day, but I want to make it clear, I was retired already.
Yeah.
And when 9/11 came, I was in Florida in Gulfport. I was at the New York Bagel shop with another New Yorker, and we both watched as the first plane hit, and we both said, "Wow." And then I was going to my car, and he came running out, and he said a second plane hit, and I said that had to be terrorism, and my heart dropped, and the
Now,
whole
when you did work for the NYP, I'm sorry, the New York Transit, how many years did you serve?
20 years from 1980 to 2000. I had just retired. That
Wow. So you just retired.
just retired, and I was going to go up, but that August 5th, I had a knee replacement surgery, so I didn't have clearance to fly. And also, right that same week, Jack Maple died. So I would have been up there for his funeral, but I couldn't fly. And it was horrible that day. I knew a lot of my friends were down there because I had worked District 4, and
Right.
I lost 4 cops that I worked with personally. One was Sergeant Moira Smith, who the ferry
Yes.
is named after, Ray Suarez, Rob Roy. I mean, it was just horrible. My friend Pam Boyce jumped out of a building, fell at the feet of a sergeant I knew, Patty Testaverde. I mean, so like yesterday when I woke up, you get a creeped out feeling, and it's like the longest day of my life every year.
Yeah.
And I post and I watch things. The only thing that made yesterday different was seeing that double rainbow. And
Right?
right, and my friend took a picture, my friend
It was
Margot,
so
and
beautiful.
she posted it. And then this morning I saw it was 2, and they were almost going straight up. And I said it was like one for each tower, and it's 22 years later. And I
Yes.
felt it was a sign like that the people maybe were saying they were okay over there, even as horrible as it was. But I got some peace from seeing the double rainbow, you know.
Yes, that was beautiful. Thank you for reminding us about that because a lot of people posted that double rainbow picture. They were all taking it, and that was gorgeous. Isn't that something you can't
Yeah, like my
explain?
friend Margot, she was in a phone store, probably Verizon or something, and she was on 77th and Broadway. And she posted it. Happened to be on Facebook 3 minutes after she posted it. So I posted it. And then this morning, my friend Janaea out here says to me, "Did you see it?" I said, "I posted it like that's the picture there that I posted on my wall after that you're showing."
It's
I posted that
incredible.
picture 3 minutes after. And it was just so calming for me to
Yeah,
see that picture. It was amazing to me to see that.
yeah,
Not that it brought anybody back, but it was just such a sign, 2 rainbows for the 2 towers.
yes, and you're right. Yeah, and 22 years. Like if you, yeah, just really,
I mean,
really incredible.
it's not going to bring the people back or the 553 cops who ultimately died, because that day we lost, I believe, 33. And then in the time since, we've lost 553 to the 9/11 diseases. And my friend Becky is still, Rebecca Hyan, my best friend,
Yeah.
she's still
My
suffering from.
neighbor, also my neighbor. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like horrible because, the things that they inhaled. Imagine compressing all of those printers and all of that ink
Yep.
and all that stuff and having to breathe that in, plus the building materials and everything.
That's what we were talking about earlier, because me and the guys were yapping about that, and it's exactly what we were talking about. So I stay on. I want to join us, my friend, retired Sergeant Brendan Ryan.
Okay,
There
cool.
he is. Hi,
Hey,
Brendan.
hi, how are you?
This is Lieutenant Carol.
Hi,
Hi,
Lou.
Brandon. Hi, Brandon.
So
Hi.
Brendan, we talked earlier, and then we're going to bring on Michael and Eddie. They're on the medical side of it. So Brendan, you were with the NYPD for many, many years, right?
Yes, just recently retired after 27 years.
Wow. So thank you for your service, my friend. You know how much I love you.
Congratulations.
I'm
Thank
crazy
you.
about you. Brendan is not just a really hard worker. He also has a beautiful Irish tenor voice, and he
Wow.
plays the bagpipes. So I've been trying to get him on the show for a long time.
Absolutely.
I love it. So now, Brendan, I know we talked a lot before, and if you don't mind,
Sure.
telling some of those, because they were really powerful stories that you were telling us when we were just talking earlier. It just stayed with me what you said about just washing people down. So, do you want to tell that story?
Yeah. So when on September 11th, I was newly promoted in training to become a sergeant. So back then they would promote you and then put you into training class, where I was at the 23rd Street Police Academy, and we were taking a break for the first few hours of the day. And as I stepped into the hallway, somebody came running down the hallway saying, "Plane just slammed into the World Trade Center." So I didn't believe it. I thought it was a little Cessna or something, a little small plane. Well, we went up to the roof, and it was life changed instantly. Instantly saw the outline of a actual large plane in the side of the World Trade Center. It was devastating. Smoke billowing out. You've all seen the photos and the
Yeah.
videos.
And
But
that's close. Where you were is really close to that.
oh, sure. Yeah. So we could see it clearly. There, yeah, you see it on your screen now. It was absolutely an unbelievable experience. So, due to the fact that I was in the police academy and Cabrini Hospital at the time was right across the street from the police academy, they set up a triage area, and that's where I was for a good amount of that particular day. Basically, officers that were injured at the scene would jump in any vehicle possible. Cars that had roofs that were smashed. Officers were laying on the cars, laying on the roofs, and they would just drive these cars up. We would take the officers off or out of the vehicles, strip them completely naked right on the sidewalk, hit them with the hose to clean them off. They were covered in dust, soot, bleeding, and it was horrible. Grown men and women crying as we're cleaning them off with these brushes. It was just a horrendous experience for them and for us as we did this. And we quickly brought them into the gymnasium at the police academy, cleaned them up, and got them towels or robes, and then quickly brought them across the street to Cabrini Hospital so they could be triaged. This is the first time I'm actually speaking about this in all these years. One, because I love you. I think you're amazing, and your show is fantastic. And I now have the ability to speak about it without crying or getting emotional about it.
Yeah. Well, Brendan, I want to thank you for doing that, because I know, I mean, I just think about it and I get like teared up. I can't even imagine having to tell that story. So thank you for doing that. And,
Sure.
and I didn't ask you to do that just to expose a story, just because when you told it earlier, I couldn't believe it. I was like, I've never experienced anything like that in my life, and I don't expect to. So like, thank you for your incredible service. And even in those weeks after, like it didn't end there. It just kept going
Certainly
and
not.
going and going.
Yeah. No, and certainly after that, as the days went on, we would be down at the pile, as they call it, and it literally, to me, as I think back now, was like a movie set. It didn't seem real. This
Right.
is our beloved New York. This is
Right.
the World Trade Center site, and it did not look real to me, and just the ambiance or the sound. There was no sound. I don't know if anyone remembers this, but on that day and the days that followed, New York was silent. You only heard police sirens, ambulance sirens, but that's it. Or a helicopter every once in a while. It was completely silent. But in the same token, it was completely loud, horrendously loud, with what was going on around you.
Right.
So it was just the whole experience was mind-boggling.
You know what? You told a really cool story about, like, because we talked about this, and then we'll bring Michael and Eddie on too, because we all talked about this. Throughout all of this horrible pain, great kindness came out as well. People were
Absolutely.
connecting in so many ways, and you told me two great stories about, like, even companies that like came out, and like people were just donating stuff and helping each other.
Certainly. Anheuser-Busch, for example, I've never seen this in my life, and I still have a few tucked away here. They delivered, as were officers on the streets, protecting the area and the individuals that live there, delivered water in cans. And it literally, it's a white can, blue lettering, Anheuser-Busch water.
Right.
I mean, you don't even see that on the store shelves, but that's what they did. They canned up water to give it to us.
Yeah.
Outback Steakhouse. They went around delivering food to officers on corners. They would pull up, hey, it's Outback, here, eat. Because they knew we were out there for 14, 15, 16 hours a day or more.
Right.
Incredible. One quick story I didn't mention earlier. I happen to be, and I'll say it real quick. I was at the corner of Canal and Varick, which was the borderline to Ground Zero.
Right.
No one was to pass that area unless you lived there and were able to prove it. So there I am. I'm a supervisor, brand spanking new supervisor, and a Lincoln Town car pulls up, and the driver says, "I got to get through." And I said, "Sir, you can't get through. It's no one's going down there." And the back window, black tinted window, rolls down, and I'm telling you, it was Nathan Lane laying across the back seat of the car, and he stated Broadway had opened up by this point. They were starting to do Broadway shows, and he's like, "Oh, listen, darling, my leg, I can't walk. I said, "Nathan, are you for real?" And I let the car through. But that was a funny moment in horror. But I still remember it to this day. I don't think he'll ever remember it, but I thought it brought a little levity to the moment.
Of course, that's a really, really funny story, actually.
Yeah.
I know these crazy things that happen like that. Like, of course, it's New York. Like, celebrities drive all the time. They're on the subway sometimes.
Yeah.
Of course you're gonna. They come into your restaurants and and bars and things like that.
He was using the old leg injury excuse. "Oh, darling, I can't walk. Please."
How to get to Broadway.
Oh my God, that's a
great moment.
Yeah, right in the middle of all that. Yeah, there's always some crazy.
There was one other thing, and I'll mention them. And first responders would know this place on Canal and Varick. There was a closed down restaurant that an individual, I don't know his name, but they called it Nino's. All of a sudden, did this pop-up restaurant. For months he was there, and people donated Italian foods, and he would cook it all. He would cook and just gave us food for months, and it was beautiful. It was fantastic.
Wow.
So it was things like that people stepped up, and it just felt good to be an American. We're all one now.
Yeah.
There was no race, there was no religion. It was like, we're Americans, and we're going to help each other out. And it was such a cool experience in those months afterwards.
Yes, I agree.
To be a New Yorker and to be an American.
I agree.
If only we could be that now.
Yeah, but you know what? It's good to remember this. It's good
Yeah.
to remember that we are capable of that. And
Yeah.
if we remember that we really are like such an amazing country, you
Absolutely.
know? And when push comes to shove, people came from other states to help. Like there were tons of cops and firefighters and EMTs that came from other states as well.
Oh yes, there were.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely, for months.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so both of you stay on. Don't, unless you have to go. I don't want to keep you if you have to go, but just stay on. And we're going to bring on Michael and Eddie. They're on the medical end of it. So this is Michael Rizzo. We have Eddie too.
Here he comes.
Oh, here he comes. There's Ed Hahn, Michael Rizzo. Hi guys. You know how much I love you. I don't have to tell you how much I love you.
No, it's mutual.
Yes, and Michael, you've done a couple of these, and Eddie too, with shows with me a couple years ago, and I always thank you for your. I know how hard this week is, and I thank you for your bravery and coming forward. And the reason I want to do this is because I want people not to forget. When people kept saying never forget, never forget, I want to be a person that makes sure people don't forget. And I thank you folks for helping me. So you both told some amazing stories as we were winding towards the show. So do you want to tell some of those stories?
Yeah, Ed and I were both paramedics when we first met. We both worked a midnight shift in New Jersey, got into the apartment to go to bed, and then everything, all hell broke loose. So we both went back to our the hospitals that we worked at and made it into Ground Zero later on that morning. I was stationed at Chelsea Piers, assigned, we probably set up like 40 OR beds and with a paramedic, a nurse, a doctor, a tech, and we were all set and standing there waiting to go. Yeah, that's the photograph there. And you can see we're gowned, all ready to take care of patients. And we stood there for a number of hours and not a single person came in.
Wow.
And it was a horrible time to think that, going through all of our minds, we were all coming to the rationalization that there were not going to be a lot of survivors.
Wow. Yeah.
Then from there, they split us up into different areas. I would say I stayed at Chelsea Piers till about 10, 11 o'clock that night. And then I was moved and stationed down at the ferry station at the tip of Manhattan. And there was where we ended up helping out a number of firemen that were injured, trouble breathing. One was having a heart attack, things like that. But it was just a handful of us paramedics and a bunch of injured and sick firemen coming in. And I looked over and I saw this one woman sitting, well-dressed. Now it's like midnight, sitting across in a chair across the way from me. So I went over to her and asked her, is everything okay? And she said, well, I live in California. I was here with my friend. She was in a wheelchair. And we were in the hotel, the Marriott, right next to the towers. And she said her friend told her to leave me here, save yourself. And so, the two of us sat there crying and knowing that her friend never made it out.
Wow.
And it was those kind of stories that were just horrible. Those started to come to light, in the press over the next few days. And the loss and devastation was horrible.
But you see that story you just told? You didn't know that woman before that moment, and you never saw her again.
And I'll never forget her.
But this is why it's important, because you took the time to talk to another human being, and that other human being in that moment had a sense of connecting to another person, and that is what counts in the world. And we must remember that it doesn't matter who you are, that kindness is never wasted. In that moment, you could have made many choices and you chose to cross the street. And that's why it's important. And I'm sure, Brendan, as a cop, how many times did you talk to people you never saw again? How many times did you help people that probably didn't even want to be helped? But you do your job. And you don't always have to do it with an open heart, but you do. And I think those are the stories that people don't talk about or don't know about. You know, like you help people all the time. You know, when I was younger, I was a little bit of a little bit of a nut, and there's so many times where a cop would pull me over and just talk to me
That's
and
it.
say, listen, instead,
Absolutely.
you know, just talk to me like, listen, you know, and it made a difference. Or they would like just see me, I was maybe a little bit out of it or whatever, and they would see me like in a bar or something and be like, listen, you're not getting in your car. Just
Mhm.
have some water, whatever. Like, those are the things that I never saw those guys again, but it made a difference in my life, probably saved my life because I didn't drive home that night. So those are the things that we remember. Like, kindness is never wasted, and that is one of those moments. You know, Eddie, you were well, I'm not gonna. You don't have to tell the same story you told me before, but what are some of your memories from that day? You know, some of the things that have blazed in your brain.
Yeah, so I was part of a different convoy, than Michael, but a part of the convoy was dispatched to Stuyvesant High School because that was the closest, largest building to Ground Zero. So that what we did was we converted Stuyvesant High School into a hospital,
Mm.
expecting like thousands of victims, and ultimately we know that that did not happen. However, there was still a tremendous benefit because we were the closest medical facility from everyone responding to Ground Zero. So all the firemen, police, EMS that were suffering from ocular problems, eye irritation,
Yeah,
problems, and they needed like respiratory treatments and eye irrigation, and then they wanted to run back to Ground Zero because we were only a few blocks away. So we acted more like as a triage center, but nevertheless, it was really incredible to see the camaraderie amongst all of Americans, New Yorkers, first responders, helping each other, holding each other's hand, helping each other. Those that had trouble walking, those that needed trouble up a curb step, and really just helping each other. That was really, really remarkable. And then watching our fellow first responders running back into Ground Zero. And then we were there when Building 7, or Tower 7, collapsed right in front of us, just like 2 blocks away, and watching all of those people running towards us, almost like a Godzilla movie, running
yeah,
towards us, like away from obviously the devastation. But I remember it was the first time in my life that I ever understood people being colorblind, because when the dust settled, there was no color. Everything was gray.
wow,
There was no red, blue, green. Every car, every cab, every building was gray.
right,
And unless you were there right at that area, you really, and that was the same gray that we were breathing, and that those that followed for months were
right,
breathing. It was that same aerosolized gray dust, like Carol and Brendan mentioned, God knows what, building material, printers, ink, paper, whatever. But
right,
everything was monochromatic, and
right.
it was really, really eerie. It was,
Yeah,
you know,
these are Michael's pictures that he sent us. This
yeah,
was not changed. This is the actual color of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's how everything was.
And then in certain areas, it was knee deep. It was like walking through
Yes.
a storm. So if you stop right there on that one, that's actually the Brooks Brothers store
That's
Wow.
across the street.
across the street. And I took that photograph because it was very interesting that the towers came down, the windows blew out of this, but yet mannequins were still standing.
Wow.
I just couldn't understand how such devastation and other things were still standing around. It was really incredible walking through there. And then this is the one photograph that for me is like the most poignant, because my brother's a career firefighter here in New Jersey, and if a firefighter happens to be, say, in their dress uniform or at an event, before they go and put on their bunker pants and boots, they take off whatever shoes they had on. You could see that there's a pair of shoes sitting there on that shelf.
Oh,
And I know that fireman took off those shoes to put on his boots and bunker pants. and he most likely passed away.
Right. Wow, that is an incredible photo. These are incredible. Thank you, Michael, for sending these to
Sure.
us, because these are. And you said you took them on just like a little
A
camera,
little, those old Kodak disposable cameras. Yeah,
right?
I used to keep one with me for
Yeah,
who would need it for that.
But I have to say the whole day is beyond eye opening, and it's soul opening. It really opens your soul, and it reminds you of kindness, like Marie, you've been saying. And
yeah,
I think that should be the message of tonight's show
yes,
is kindness, and that we need more of that now more than ever.
absolutely.
And I think that when the country was violated that day by a foreign terrorist,
Right.
that everyone came together, and that in some strange way, Americans can be their own worst enemy. But however, when someone violates and a foreign terrorist comes in and really disturbs us, that we all come together
Came together. Yeah.
still, no matter what, that there's
Yeah.
a foundation that we all abide by,
Right.
support each other as brothers and sisters, of this great country. And I think that that's the message, that Maria, I think that this is a wonderful, wonderful day, wonderful episode of your show. And, we need more of this to remind everyone we are all Americans.
Yes. And I thank you all. I mean this. I'm not just saying this. Thank you because I know this is not easy, and I really appreciate you doing this. But I think it is so important. It's so important for us to do this show, because I don't want people to forget not just what happened, but that how amazing we are. How
Yes.
amazing we are as Americans. We're incredible. I was saying earlier, I met cops and firefighters from all over the country that came in. They stopped their jobs and volunteered, because I lived on Houston, so I was really close to there. And I would go down almost every day with like big signs, me and my roommates, big signs that said, "We love you, God bless America, keep going." And we would bring cookies and whatever we could. And we met people from everywhere. And I was,
All over. And all the construction workers,
yes,
everyone was there. Those signs, now that you mentioned it, I remember they would bus us in on the West Side Highway, and
Yep.
as they bust us out, everyone's holding the signs, cheering and clapping, and this went on for months.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it was it gave you energy. It gave you the strength to go home, get 2 hours of sleep, and go all the way back and do it again the next day.
Right. Thank you for saying that,
An
Brendan.
amazing
Yeah.
moment.
Because I mean, I just felt like, what else can we do? Like, I don't do any of those jobs, but what can I do? I can cook, I can bring food, or I can hold a sign, or I can, you just want to do anything. And I'll tell a quick story, and then I want to read something that Sergeant Sue sent. But one of the best memories, a good memory I have of this, is that we were, I work in the music industry, right? So, and you guys all know, you've been to those great places I work at. It was so weird because we didn't know if it was okay to sing. We didn't want to offend anybody. We didn't want to cross. We were like, should we? Should we not? What do we do? And it was just like a ghost town for so long, of like that weird, like, and then I remember this huge group of like 12 really, really loud guys came in. And they were funny, and they were gregarious, and they were yelling at the top of their lungs. They just walked in, and they were like, "Where's the music?" We were like, it's here. And they said, "We heard on the news that people said, go back to New York and spend money. That's the best thing you can do." And I mean, I'm going to cry. I knew that it was like, oh my God, that is such a great thing you can do. Yes, come back and spend money. Come back and like sing with us. And it was so powerful. And I don't know if it was maybe like 3 weeks later, but it like kind of like started my heart again. I was like, okay, like, yeah, you want me to sing? I'll sing. And I remember Michael Isaacs, I was working with our buddy, our mutual buddy, Michael Isaacs. He was like, let's go. we were ready to go because we were,
snap out of it.
yeah, like let's do this. They need us. They need us. And so that was so important. I do. Okay, Michael Dion, who's my buddy who worked down there as well, and Roses and the duplex. I carried 300 sandwiches on my shoulders and was at Ground Zero to do something. Yeah, that's what. Yeah, exactly.
That's
You
great.
yes, and I know Michael, and he's great. Thank you for reminding of us all the inspiring stories. That's my cousin Cora, who I adore. Wendy Stewart says, Maria, this is seriously the best empathetic look back of anything I've seen on 9/11. Well, you know why? Because we're all coming from such a good place. And okay, I want to read. So this is my good friend who I love, Sergeant Suzanne Murray, who worked at the same place, Brendan, that you were talking about, the academy. She's a sergeant like you, retired also now. And I was so scared because she was missing in action for like days. I couldn't get a hold of her. And I do want to tell this quick story. Finally, I had a few of my friends over for dinner because that's what I know to do when I go and get stuff is just cook. And so we finally had about 10 of our friends over. And I remember Sue ate, I think I made a lasagna, and because she loved lasagna. And then at the end of the dinner, I'll never forget it because we had a new kitten, and Sue just like kind of like laid back on the couch and she fell asleep. And the kitten crawled right up here and just stayed there. And I thought, okay, like the world is going back. Like there's still kittens. We can still gather. Like my friend made it out. Like I remember things like that are so important that we remember. And as we divide and divide and divide and subdivide, younger people, the older people, different political, if we could stop and just remember how united we were then and how we cared about each other as human beings, so, okay. So this is what Sue Murray writes. She couldn't be here, but she says, when I think about that day, every September 11th, I think about the bravery, resilience, selflessness, and honor of New York City's first responders, many of whom perished, that I did know and worked with. I think about the people I am proud to say I worked with on 9/11 and the days after. I am proud of New Yorkers and how their compassion came shining through. I, of course, think about and pray for the families of the fallen and all those still battling both physical and mental issues from 9/11. The savagery inflicted upon thousands of innocent people that day was at first incomprehensible to me. After 15 years of being a cop, I never witnessed such evil in my career. Threats of all kinds kept coming throughout the day to bridges, tunnels, sensitive locations like the UN embassies, iconic landmarks, airports, subway systems, and the threat of truck bombs, car bombs was all too real. First responders from all over assisted us in every possible way. People came together from all corners to help through the worst terrorist attack on American soil. Never forget the victims. Never forget the first responders who gave their lives to save others. Never forget their families. Never forget the humanity and compassion that emulated throughout the city and the country, at least for a time after this heinous attack on our country. That's beautiful, Sue. Thank you for sending us that. And I think that that's what we need to remember. And so now down in the that area, which is now called the Freedom Tower, they have this beautiful purple lights. And also I love that memorial that they've designed right in the foundation of the Twin Towers, the waterfall, and the names of the people. And, if you're visiting New York, I know it's hard, but it's also beautiful. It would behoove you as an American or someone from another country to go down there and look at the worst of what happened and the best of what we did with it. And look at how beautiful this is. So this is on all the time. It's a reflective pool. And what Leo was saying about the lights that happened, Carol was talking about the double rainbow. Danielle, who's our friend and a medium, and she said so many things about that day. And the double rainbow is so important. I mean, look at those lights. I was downtown last night. I was downtown working. And when I see them My first reaction is sadness. My second reaction is horror. My third reaction is like my heart gets warm. And I think like we're still here. Those of us that are here are still here. And those, like, I know a guy that just passed away 2 weeks ago. He was actually a chef, is a chef. And he was one of the guys that went down there and cooked. And
Wow.
cooked and from out of the goodness of his heart just kept going and cooking and cooking, and he got a lung disorder from it, so he just passed away a few days ago. And it's like these were the good people that just came out, like you were talking about, Brendan. These just here, just take that. People were donating all kinds of things and benefits afterwards. So I just think so much has happened since then, and a lot of other people need us, to donate to that whatever's happening. But like, if you ever meet someone, like I love that saying that says you be kind to each other. You don't know what people are going through. You don't, and just remember that. But don't be so quick to judge someone you may not recognize as a friend. Just remember, I say this too about like the when we went through COVID, like I say this on the mic, when you see a nurse, when you see a cop, when you see an EMT, like these are the people that show up for this stuff over and over and over again. Buy them a coffee, buy them a drink, shake their hand, remind them and thank them. And, it's just important that we keep thanking each other. So,
And Maria, I would also just like to take just a second and say, we need to acknowledge all of those first responders' families.
yes,
Those that either lost a spouse, a partner, a mom, a dad, a daughter, a son, and what they're going through.
right,
Like, because they're, not only on that day or finding out that news, that tragic news a day or two or a month later, but now years later, people that ran into the fire, ran towards the fire, ran towards the tragedy, and now their family is now grieving because
right,
those family members made that decision to be there, and now they're experiencing grief and loss. And I think that sometimes they just go a little unnoticed. We focus on those that we lost, but
Mm,
it's the families that lost, their closest family member,
right,
and that's terrible,
yeah,
and it's a domino effect, and it just, it's horrible. It really, really is. But again, to your point, we can't forget the kindness, the camaraderie, the signs, and all of that. But I just thought about that
yeah,
because
absolutely.
I lost.
Certainly, and on that note that you're saying, and Maria, you touched upon this for a brief moment. When this event occurred, cell phone service ended.
And
So
right,
now I'm thinking back. I'm like, whoa! My family and friends tried calling desperately
right,
all day long to get a
yes,
hold of me, and they couldn't. So the
um,
stress load that although thank God I'm alive and living, they were under tremendous stress all day,
right,
wondering, am I alive? Because they
right.
couldn't get a hold of me. The cell phone
No, you're
service
right.
was out for many hours.
Yeah, you're no. Bro, I remember in the convoy. I mean, Mike and I just split up because we were in two different convoys. But I remember calling my mother and saying, "I'm on the GW Bridge. I'm headed in," and my mother was like, "Please come home. Like make it home."
Right.
But then you're right. After that, there was radio silence.
And it was
There
interesting,
nothing.
and then all the days that followed with watching that billowing smoke for weeks on end. And we were moving into our new apartment 4 days later on the 15th. And we were on the 17th floor next to your other good listeners, Jeffrey and Steven.
Yeah.
We'd bring a box or two into the living room, and then we'd go out on the terrace and just look and just seeing the smoke come up. It took us forever to unpack that truck because we were mesmerized watching and still didn't believe what happened.
And traumatized.
And traumatized.
Right. And you
Happened.
almost didn't want to move. I like Brendan was talking about this, or maybe it was Michael earlier about the there was signs everywhere. There was signs everywhere. You would go to the hospitals because we went down to donate blood, and there was nobody there, right? Because as we know, it wasn't nobody was showing up at the hospitals. I mean, it was more like recover. But what was there was signs. People were the saddest thing. People would make signs with the picture of their loved one saying missing. If you see this is where they worked. And the city was plastered with them on trees, on hospital. I mean, in everywhere, everywhere you walked, there was like a wall of pictures of people. So yeah, things like that, you're right. The people that are left behind. And also so many and a lot of people we know got stuff from that day, like breathing problems, heart problems, so many, some of them luckily are still here and some of them, died as well. And it's all these related things like Jon Stewart. I love Jon Stewart because of his fight for the 9/11. He kept fighting and fighting and saying, like, what do you mean you have no money for these people? Like, are you crazy? And a lot of people thought he was, too aggressive. I personally think he's a hero for doing that because he had a platform to do that, and he did it. So that's what is so important. And okay, so let me see. We're coming to the end of our show, and I almost don't want. I just want to keep going, but so there's a lot of beautiful comments. Liz Goldenberg, who lives down there, she said she couldn't get back into her apartment for 8 weeks. As our friend Jay Rivera, same thing. He lived on Washington Street at the time. He couldn't go back there for a long time. A lot of those places. The 911 Museum and Memorial provided a lot of closure for me, gave me a way to remember fondly with the love of friends that died that day.
Beautiful place. I'm telling you, if you haven't been there, you have to go. It is absolutely reality.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know. Thank you.
They have fire engines, police vehicles. They have store racks with the clothing with that white dust that was on everything.
Yeah.
Still there. They have, I don't even know, 30 something floors of the World Trade Center in 4 feet. 4 feet. They show you this is like 30 something floors and it's 4 feet all compressed.
Wow.
That's reality. You go there and you're just shocked and amazed. Bring tissues because you're gonna cry from the moment you went there. It's
wow, Brendan. Thank you for reminding us about that. I've never been there. I do want to go down there, and I keep waiting for someone to go with me. Like I have relatives in Boston. If they visit, I like my Ziana. I want to bring my Ziana there. I think she would, because my Aunt Anna. It's funny. We're all kind of connected, right? I was sleeping that day in the morning because I work nights, and my Aunt Anna called me at 9 and said, "You have to wake up and turn on your TV." Like, she didn't say why. She just said, and because I did live near there at the time. And so, like, people that were connected to us that day, like even yesterday, my aunt and I called each other. It's like, you don't forget that. And then while I'm on the phone with her, then the second plane hit, and then I went up to the roof, like, to film. And I'm like, is this on television? We're talking about stuff that happens and you freeze it in your brain. I remember walking out and thinking, like, after the both towers had fallen and people were, like you said, that signs where people were just walking. And then I remember just like, this is what my brain did. Michael, you were talking about where your brain does a weird thing. I said, oh, did somebody move the towers? Like, stone cold sober, nothing. In my brain, I couldn't fathom that those gigantic towers in my neighborhood, it was just sky now, So, like, it's weird things like that your brain doesn't forget.
I was at the first bombing. It was 93, 94. I was there as a paramedic.
Oh, geez.
And
We both were again.
and I'm like, I said to myself, these things could never fall.
Right.
Never in a million years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Isn't that
I,
something?
Maria, you just triggered something. When this incident occurred while we were in the police academy, came off the roof, and we had to go downstairs to get equipment because they didn't know what they were going to do. Were we going to stay at the academy and triage these individuals or go down there? And I remember back then they had TVs on these like 3-foot or 4-foot carts they would wheel around to, show videos or whatever. And we're watching live TV. But I remember vividly radio transmissions, the police radios that we had of officers screaming or yelling into the microphones that they couldn't breathe, and literally shooting out the windows of the World Trade Center, the ground floor where they were, because they couldn't figure out how to get out of the building.
Wow.
So they literally were shooting out the windows.
Oh, with their guns.
Radio transmissions of them shooting out the windows. True.
Oh my God, Brendan.
And now that you've said this, it's coming back. Like, oh my God, I remember hearing them that they couldn't breathe, and they're shooting out the windows. And we're online at the academy getting equipment like vests and different things because they didn't know what they wanted to do with us.
Right.
So, and one shout out to the year the incident occurred while there were recruits in the academy, and these recruits, not fully trained, stepped up that year, that time. They now, if they're still on the job, have 22 years on the job. But back then they were still in the academy, and it was they stepped up. I don't know if you remember, they put 6-foot fencing around the entire lower of Manhattan.
I do remember. I do remember. Well,
They were an integral part of that, of unloading those fences from the trucks and setting them up and actually fencing off the entire area. That whole academy group. No apparatus. You were told what, Christy Whitman? Oh, the air's fine.
Right.
Breathe away.
Right. Remember.
Sorry, man. There are so many people suffering because of that ill advice.
Yes.
These young kids at that time were out there without masks. There were no masks issued. None.
And you know what?
On the sidewalk that a construction guy dropped, an actual mask. I still have it. I put that on. I didn't care who had that mask on their face.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely, Brendan. You're right. And
these memories are coming back as we're talking. I'm just like, wow.
Yeah, it's mind blowing, right? And also, Sergeant Sue told me a very similar story because she worked with recruits as well, teaching at the academy. And they went down there. There was about, I don't know how many of them, but she took a class down there. Like they just had to go down there. And same thing. And she always said to me, these were young kids that were just recruits, and what they did to step up, like, think about that, to just step up like that. I mean, just mind blowing and amazing. And like you said, most of them hopefully are still on the job. But I hope that people, that's what I'm saying. When you run into a NYPD, FDNY, transit police, EMTs, you're just going about your day. Remember these things. Yes. Remember that a lot of them are those original people that were there that day, or they were people that lost friends. Just remember that. Yeah. And don't be so quick to tense up because you see a cop, or, I'm talking to young kids now.
Yes.
Just remember, keep your heart open. We are all human beings. We've all been to hell and back in some way. And we had that experience, for better or worse, together. We had it together as a city, as a region, as a country. So remember to love your country. Remember to love each other. And I don't even know how to thank you guys. I know this is a hard day, but I feel like we needed to do this. And I feel like we helped to get some good stuff out into the world. And you will always be in my heart. And I will always honor you as my friends and as first responders. Thank you for your service.
Well, thank you for having us. I mean, you're fantastic. We love you, and I'm glad we were able to get the word out there of that whole situation.
Yeah, and the double rainbow, like Lieutenant Carol was talking about, and Dee's from Dee's Enlightened Edits was talking about that double rainbow meant something yesterday.
Mm.
So
Absolutely.
just keep putting good things out into the world and treat each other with kindness. I can't tell you enough how much I love you guys. You know that. And Leo, thank you for everything that you do. Our sidekick, Leo Rodriguez. And please come back next week. If you want to any of our shows, they go into a podcast. If you want to listen, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeart. Yes, the Stunning Double Rainbow. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Look at that. That was yesterday.
Gorgeous.
From all over the city. Oh my God. Incredible, right? Incredible. So if that's not a sign from God, I don't know what is. Okay. We're in podcast, and also you can catch us on our shows are archived on YouTube every week. And we love you so much. Please come back and take care of